Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a review. This one is for Holy Grail Games' upcoming release called Museum, which is a 2 to 4 player set collection game all about filling your museum with rare objects.
Yeah, we're all competing with a museum in front of us, trying to fill up this board. So it is a set collection game. We're going to be collecting cards from a variety of different cultures across history, but there's also a little bit of a puzzle element because at the end of the game, you have to fit all of these collections into your museum.
All right, so the game is all about collecting those objects. When you look at the objects, they all come from one of many different civilizations. At the top of every single one of these cards is going to be a color-coded bar that refers to the civilization that it comes from, but you're going to see that text right here as well. Also, each card in the upper left-hand corner has both a cost and the number of victory points you get the moment that it goes into your museum. In the upper right-hand corner, it belongs to one of 6 different domains. These can be things like navigation or culture and so forth, because you're also going to be collecting for not only your civilizations, but also the unique type of domains that they could belong to. And across the bottom, you're just going to see the flavor text. Now, the beautiful thing about this game, before we even get into the review, is the artwork. There is just a ton of different artwork because every single one of these objects is thematic and historic, but also thematic to the area that it comes from.
Well, of course, if you didn't pick up on this already, every card is unique.
Yeah.
So all of these collections are all unique cards you can gain.
Now, I should say, too, this is just the base game. We realize that the Kickstarter had a variety of different expansions as well, which we want to play as well, but we're just covering the base game right now. All right, so each player is going to come to the game with one of these giant player boards. This giant player board is going to have a number of spaces on it where you can't even see me on the camera, where you can place your objects. You're also going to see this color-coded area that's going to represent your color, player color, but also some extra scoring that you can get at the end of the game if you fulfill that with one specific type of collection. The main board itself is going to be broken into sections. Each of these sections is going to have 2 cards face up in front of it from the continent or the area for which that type of civilization came from.
I think each one of these decks has 3 different cultures in it. So 12 different cultures total, right?
Yep. So when you look at Europe, you have things like the Celtics and the Greeks and so forth. You're going to have a number of different prestige tokens. These can be used to pay for cards, but they're also worth victory points at the end of the game. You have headlines at the beginning of each new round, starting with the first player. A new headline is going to flip. These are going to have area effects that affect everybody at the table. They can open up additional cards in some of these different areas, but they can also close down exhibits, period, so you can't buy from them. You also have expert cards, which can be used to modify your stuff.
Yeah, you can have up to 3 experts. They hang out in your little expert office in your museum, and they'll either increase some of your sets, they will give you ongoing benefits, variety of different things, but you can only have 3 of them, so you have to choose wisely.
You have a victory point track that goes around the outside. The game is going to be played until one player reaches 50 victory points. Then every single other player at the table is going to get 1 extra turn. You're going to have a lot of in-game scoring, so it's not a race. You're actually getting some points at the end of the game, depending upon what you've built. All right, so to start the game, each player is going to get 1 card from each one of the different stacks of cards. So you have 1 from each of these different things. You're also going to get 1 or 2 patron cards, of which you'll pick 1, and you're going to get 1 of these favor cards. Now, the patron cards is an end of the game goal that only you know. There's a giant stack of these that can be used, and they have a wide variety of different things, such as collecting from very specific civilizations or certain types of domains or mixtures of all of them. And they also have varying ranges of points you can score depending on what thresholds you reach.
That's right. Some of these cards are easier to complete. Like your card just gives you 5 points for every person you hire, so you can kind of control that. This one, for example, gives me points for having Phoenician sets. And you'll notice I can get 28 points, which is a ton, if I collect 11. These can be a little more challenging. It even says in the rule book, maybe for your first game, if you got a choice, don't go for the harder one.
Right.
But this is like high risk, high reward right here.
A lot of points for that. Also, each player is going to be randomly dealt 1 of these favor cards. These favor cards are allowed to be used once and once per turn when it is your turn. They're going to be expended and thrown into the discard pile, but you do have the opportunity to collect more of these for every 10 victory points that you meet. And you'll see that little icon there. So every time I pass denominations of 10, I collect 1 of these, but I can only play 1 per turn. All right, so everyone has their hand of cards, and then it's simply playing. The first thing that happens, starting with the first player, and this is really kind of weird to explain because it has a really unique turn structure in the game. The first player, so if it is Jeremy's turn and it's my turn to go, I get to place or collect any one of these 8 objects face up that I wish. And there's no cost to it. I simply say, hey, I want this to Call City, it's mine. And it simply goes into my hand. Now everyone else whose turn it is not has the opportunity to also take any one of these face up objects. But the trick is, every one that they collect, I get to get 1 free prestige point, not from them, but from the bank.
That's right. So in most cases, you're going to want to do this. And there are a variety of reasons why that we'll talk about. But you'll want to take a card either that matches what you're looking for or that has a high point value in the corner.
So you can pay for things.
Right.
Once everyone has done that, and then it is my turn to make a decision. I have 2 decisions to make. One, I can either furnish my museum, and that's by using the cards in my hand to pay for the cards in my hand to place into my museum to get victory points. I'll explain that in a moment. The other thing you can do is you can simply take inventory. And inventory is every time you pay for something in the game, it goes off to your own personal discard pile. And these are all going to be displayed so everybody can see these cards that you have in front of you. So I'll explain the inventory first.
Yep.
On your turn, instead of furbishing your museum, you can pick up all your cards back in your hand. And that's important because these cards are going to help you pay for future cards. The other thing you can do instead of that is to actually place these in your museum. And I'll explain part of it.
Yeah.
If I want to play any of these cards, the upper left-hand corner is both the amount of victory points I get and the cost of that particular item. So if I want to play, for instance, to Call City, it is worth 5 victory points, but also costs me 5. I can pay for this in one of a variety of different ways, either with other cards in my hand. So I can give up the Pantheon and this complex that equal 5, throw them in my discard pile, and then place this face up, immediately scoring 5 victory points. You're going to also notice that some of these masterworks also give you 1 free prestige. Anyone that's worth 5 gives you 1 free victory point. The other way I can pay for it is by giving up just straight prestige.
Yep.
Now the trick is, you don't have to just buy things from your own hand. You can also buy them from your discard pile or from other players' discard piles.
Yeah, that's where the puzzle really comes into play and it gets really interesting. But if I want to do that, for example, if Jeremy has something in his discard pile already that I really want that costs 4, I have to take my card that can pay for it and I have to place it into his discard pile.
Yeah.
So I'm giving him now a card that he can pick back up into his hand. In addition, I have to pay him a prestige point from in front of me.
Yes.
So if I don't have any prestige points to start with, I can't buy from other people. But I'm giving him not only a victory point, but that's also money that he can use interchangeably on his turn now to spend on other cards.
And remember, you can break down that cost in any way that you so wish. In fact, you can overpay for cards if you so wish. Say, for instance, I have a card that costs me 1, but my only card that I can use to pay for is a 3. I give up that 3, put it into my discard pile, but I get no change back.
That's right.
You just simply overpay for the card. What are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to collect civilizations and domains. We'll talk about that right now because it's important to understand how the game works. At the end of the game, and we'll talk about the turn structure a little bit more, but at the end of the game, you're getting points for how many of the same type of civilization that you have and how many of those domain pieces that you have in the upper left or right-hand corner. For instance, this one looks like a column. I get points for set collecting columns, but they have to come from different civilizations. So there's kind of the rub within the game. I want to get a lot of Greek things, but I don't want all my Greek things to have columns because I want to have my columns from different civilizations.
Yeah, it's definitely, you have to balance both, right?
Yep.
You want, I think there are 7 different domains and 12 different cultures. Not every culture has every possible symbol.
So remember, the important thing to understand here is when you furbish your museum, they can be cards from your hand. You can furbish them with cards from your discard pile by paying with cards in your hand, or you can furbish it with other players' cards by giving them cards. So there's a wide variety of different things. So you have to pay attention to what other people are doing. At the end of your turn, you're going to refill these spots up to 2. Now, some of the cards in here are called public opinion. We haven't talked about that. They look like a newspaper heading, and the moment they come out, they replace that card that was supposed to be in that area, and they introduce one of the tokens to that area as well. What this does is those tokens stay out there for the rest of the game. That public opinion card will flush at the end of the player's turn, meaning that you're going to get more objects in there. However, at the end of the game, you're going to look at all the cards you have in your discard pile that you've used to pay for things. For every public opinion that is in that particular country, you lose that many points depending on public opinion times that type of coin. Thematically, what that's saying is, hey, if you're going to go to Russia and you're going to loot our rare objects, but you don't put them in your museum, we don't like that. Right. So the public opinion is against you. They want their items to be showcased in your museum. So you're going to lose points for those. So you have to weigh not only with the cards I'm building to my civilization, but also what cards do I leave here that can get poor public opinion?
You have to balance that because you can lose a lot of points of that public opinion if you're not careful. Especially if you pay for like a 5 with a bunch of 1s, you'll end up with a huge discard pile at the end of the game.
One other thing I want to mention before we get into the review, this is going to go around the table until one of the players scores 50 points. However, at the start of one player is going to be the start player throughout the game. When it comes back around to them, they're going to flip one of these headline cards. And these headline cards have a wide variety of things. They can introduce a +1 or a -1 token into one of these 4 different areas, meaning that there's going to be more cards in there or less cards. It can even close down an area permanently for an entire round around the table. So if you're trying to collect something that may be a Greek item from Europe, you may not have the opportunity for 4 more turns to get something like that. At the end of the game, you're scoring victory points for a wide variety of things, and there's all these player aids that are going to help you walk through how you score points. But obviously, you're getting points for any of the things you've scored throughout the game. Then you're going to score points for your civilizations, and you have another thing here that shows you what that scores. For instance, if I have 3 cards from the Inca Empire, I get 1 point, not a whole lot.
Right.
But if I've collected 16 cards, it's 85 points.
Yeah, and something to mention here is that you don't have to just collect these cards.
Right.
You have to place them in your museum adjacent to each other to build one large exhibit.
Right.
So having 3 of those cards, but putting them in 3 different places of your museum, you don't get the sets for completing that.
Right. It's very important to understand that too. When you're buying and placing these in your museum, just through the course of the game, you can place them anywhere. You do have one final opportunity at the end of the game to rearrange things. We'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment as well. Let me go through the rest of the scoring. Any of the domains are going to score for you. Again, there's a chart on here. Say, for instance, you have 7 of the navigation wheels, all from different cultures. You're going to score 25 points, which is quite a bit. If you've met any of the conditions of your patron card, you're going to score those points as well. You're going to score points for your museum layout, and this is why Ryan was talking. This is so important. You're going to see a number of different rows and then columns in here. These are going to connect by little hallways, and as long as you connect by hallways, similar types of cards, either through domains or civilizations, you're going to score for them. So if you have something over here that is all, say for instance, the Greek Empire, but you have the rest over here, they don't touch each other, so you're not going to score any points for them.
Right, and that's between domains and cultures.
Right.
So if you're wanting to stack all of your, for example, architecture cards together, and you have a full set of architecture cards, then also trying to make full sets of the cultures is difficult because those all have to touch. And also the cultures have to touch. So you have to be clever in the way that you string these together and create chains, basically, to make them touch in a logical way.
There's also another spatial puzzle. This is a 2-sided board. On the main side, you're going to see this cross going through the center of it. If you fill this entire thing with one particular type of collection, you're going to score 10 points. If you fill out the entire board with 25 cards, because there's 25 slots, you get 12 points. If you do both, you get 25 points. So there's another spatial puzzle that you have to be aware of through the course of the game. Finally, you're going to score points for any of the prestige tokens you have left over, minus any of the points for the public opinion that you have. So that's museum. Let's talk about review.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I mean, there's just so much good here. I'll say that straight off the bat. I love, like you said earlier, the artwork, the graphic design, and just the presentation of this game is phenomenal.
Yep.
I mean, when you look at these cards, the collection cards, and you see what looks like the backing of a book, and these look like folders that were laid out, and just everything has a space on the board. I love that. It makes me want to play the game more when it looks this pretty.
I mean, you know me. I'm a huge history buff. I love historical type games, and this one, especially with the Vincent Dutrait art, he does a lot of different artwork over a lot of different games, but this feels like a real collection of his work because there's so many unique cards and they're all different. So you can look at all these and actually learn history, figure out oh, I didn't know the Zolkin Tower was a Mayan civilization. Plus there's all this information across the bottom. This gives me the same type of feeling of like Wingspan. Although they're very different games, they still have that learning aspect to it where you can really dig in and say, this is not only teaching me how to play set collection style game, which it is a basic gateway game, but it's also teaching me some history that I can pass on to kids or, you know, a wide variety of different educational purposes.
Well, I think next time you go to a museum, you're going to start noticing these things too.
Well, I would hope.
Some of these items and collections, it's just really cool the way they dug into the history. And for me, the puzzle of building out that museum at the end is so satisfying. I mean, it can be a little AP when you're sitting there trying to maximize, but everyone's doing it at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're just sitting there forever. But really, like realizing you could score a lot of points if you just move this one thing to create a chain, it's a really satisfying experience.
There's a lot of good decision points in the game too. Like the first time you might play the game, you might think, well, I'm just going to take the biggest cost cards, and that will serve you to a certain purpose, but you could be losing by paying too much for particular cards. Plus, you really have to, the second and third, fourth time you play this game, you have to recognize the cards that are in your discard pile and other players' discard piles, especially yours, because that public opinion, say for instance there's 4 tokens in Europe, and I have 4 cards here from Europe at the end of the game, that's 16 points I lose that I didn't really realize the first time you played the game. And so you play it multiple times, you're like, oh, I can pay for this with 3 different cards, but that one has 4 public opinion. I'm going to pay it with this one that it has 1 public opinion.
Right, exactly.
So you're making these decision points not only there, but for a variety of different reasons across the way.
I mean, there are a ton of decisions you have to make. When you're drafting your cards, even on another player's turn, you have to decide if you also want to draft a card and give them that prestige point. We have to decide when to grab these
we didn't really
experts.
mention the experts.
The experts are going to shift down every time somebody doesn't buy them. So you lose a chance to get them really quick. And you're staring at them wanting to get a certain one, but you have to use the same kind of currency that you'd use to build your exhibits out. So oftentimes you get to do one or the other because you don't have a ton of cards to work with in your hand.
Right. I also love the favor cards. We didn't really mention those too much, but these really do break the game. Every time someone plays a favorite card, you're like, what did you just do?
Right.
How can I do that? Oh, I got this card that does something even better. Like, they all have really, really powerful benefits when you use them. Plus, you're using them many times. I mean, you have the opportunity to get them 4 times in addition to your original one that you have at the start of the game. So those really come into the way that you approach each one of the turns. Plus, I love the idea that you're not out of a round every turn. Even though it's not your turn, you still have the opportunity to get cards into your hand. So you're not always using that action that allows you to pick up your entire inventory. Sometimes you say, hey, you can have a victory point, Ryan. I need a card, you know? And that's cool.
And it certainly gives you opportunities for hate drafting as well. If you see someone over there, because every card you have is put in your museum face up. So I can look at Jeremy's museum at any point and think, oh, he's only one pot away from, or one, color away from having a whole set or whatever.
Yeah.
And if I see that card come out, I can try to grab it before you get to it.
Yep.
Now, reversely though, you get to wait and see. Maybe I accidentally use that card later to pay for a cost, and then you grab it out of my discard pile.
Yeah.
So you really have to always be aware, not only of what's in your discard pile and everybody else's, but also like putting cards in there, not just for the public opinion, but also I'm giving somebody maybe a 5-point card when I use that 5-point card to pay for something.
Plus the prestige.
Right. So it's just the amount of decisions are mind-blowing. I mean, it is a gateway game in that it's very easy to learn.
Yeah.
But some of these decisions are very difficult to make.
Do you have any negatives?
The only thing that I would even say, the way the prestige points come out can be a little fiddly, and you're just constantly exchanging those. I kind of wish they had been something that was maybe just like a token, like a coin instead of like the ribbon thing. But like at this point, I'm nitpicking because every experience with this game has been so phenomenal that I really don't have a lot of negative to say about it.
I expected, we had the opportunity to do a Kickstarter preview for this a while ago, and I think the timing of it just didn't work in our schedule. And to be quite honest, I looked at the game. I was like, this looks really gateway. I don't know if it's for me. And I played the game, and it is still gateway. However, there's enough elements in here to make it really interesting. The card play in here is more interesting than just, I know we said you're just paying for costs and basically laying these in your museum, but there's a lot of other things you have to think about in this. The spatial element is really, really important to the game. And that kind of elevates it from that gateway game to something that's far more satisfying to me as a gamer.
Yeah, and you'll get to situations where you think you've just got it all figured out, and you'll, I got 12 culture cards, or whatever, and then you'll look at them and be like, oh wait, 3 of these are pots. I can't use all 3. Or like you have a whole bunch of columns, and oh wait, 2 of these columns are from the same civilization. How did I make that mistake? And then you're wondering like, let's play again. Maybe I won't make those same mistakes. But it's hard not to, because there's so much information to track in this game. If you can easily get overwhelmed if you try to just grab all of everything. You really need to focus down and choose just like maybe 1 or 2 domains and 1 or 2 civilizations to focus on.
I'm super excited to try the expansion stuff. We didn't have the opportunity. This is just the base game, but I understand there's a lot more player interaction. Maybe even some like take that
modules and stuff too that get added, things like that.
So excited. Plus, the artwork in this is beyond fantastic. It's really well done and produced. That is Museum. It is from Holy Grail Games. 2 to 4 player game. If you have any questions, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and we will catch you guys next time.